I said yes to Daniel because I wanted proof I could still make someone's face light up. That's the plain truth I've been dodging with softer words. Curiosity, boredom, just for a laugh. I was 31, for years married to a good man who loads the dishwasher correctly and remembers my mom's birthday without prompting, and I said yes to a man I didn't want because I liked seeing what yes did to him. And then I pretended I could keep it small, like a spark you trap in a jar and call it ambience while the glass grows hot in your hand. Everyone in our office knew Daniel had a crush on me. Not the big, cinematic kind you make movies about. The earnest, persistent kind that shows up with 2 coffees because they messed up my order and gave me an extra, even when the lid still has the little amber sticker from the cafe. He laughed too hard at my mid-level jokes and stand-ups. He commented a fire emoji on a photo of the department holiday party where I was wrapped in an awful cardigan with light-up snowflakes. He rotated 3 pairs of khakis and owned more button-downs than shirts with actual personality. If I'm making him sound small, that says more about me than him. He is kind. He is awkward. He is the sort of man who always lets you step into the elevator first and then gets flustered when the doors try to close on him because he waited too long. You could build a life with a man like that if you didn't already have one. I have one. Ethan. He teaches 8th grade civics and can explain gerrymandering in a way that makes 13-year-olds put their phones down. He does the Sunday crossword in pen and leaves it half-finished on the coffee table for me because he knows I like the feeling of solving the last few clues. He kisses in a way that means here you are, not look at me. He is dependable. Dependable sounds boring until you realize it is the opposite of fragile. I forgot that for a while. It was Chelsea's dare. There is always a Chelsea in stories like this, but that's not me shifting blame, it's just how the setup looked. It was a Wednesday, the kind of afternoon when the sun makes the parking lot shimmer and the office AC is set to Antarctic conference room. We were in the break room with the emergency cookies someone brings every time the CEO sends a quick update calendar invite. Daniel walked by, already smiling, and asked if anyone needed anything from the cafe downstairs. I said, I'm good, thanks, and he said, okay. Holler if you change your mind, like I might actually holler, and my friend Chelsea leaned in the way women do when they're about to say something they shouldn't. He would marry you if you looked at him for 3 seconds, she murmured. Chelsea, I said, but I was smiling, a little shook up soda can inside my ribs. I dare you, she said, grin shark bright. Say yes the next time he asks you out. Just once. Stop being noble. Give us a story. I rolled my eyes and said she was ridiculous. The dare stuck like gum to the sole of a shoe. Daniel asked 2 days later, near the elevators, exactly as I knew he would. He had to gather himself for it. You could watch his courage climb his throat. Would you? This is probably dumb. Want to get dinner sometime? He said it like a question on a test he already assumed he'd failed. This is where I could have been decent. I could have said, I'm flattered, but I'm married. I hope this isn't awkward. Instead, the dare rose inside me, fizzy, and I said yes. Not a slow, complicated yes. A bright one. I did it because I wanted to see the light come on in his face. It did. A whole room flicked on behind his eyes. Really, he said, and I nodded like it was nothing. He said he'd text me. I turned half away so he wouldn't see my mouth tilt into a smile that wasn't for him at all. You should know I told myself this wasn't cheating. We weren't going to kiss. We weren't going to do anything. It was a dinner. A social experiment. If you call your cruelty an experiment, you can pretend detachment equals ethics. Daniel chose a restaurant nicer than I expected. A place where the napkins are heavy and the server tells you the specials as if you've been invited to something rare. He wore a blazer that didn't fit his shoulders quite right and shoes that had seen a wedding or two, and he had flowers waiting in a glass of water because he forgot to bring a vase. He knocked over his water by trying to move it for the flowers. Everything about him was effort. He complimented my dress in a way that made me feel seen and also embarrassed to be seen that way by him. He asked questions and listened to the answers. He told me about his mother's lasagna and the year he tried to be a professional drummer and ended up in an overnight warehouse job that taught him to love office hours. He laughed at my story about the bat that got into our apartment through the attic fan and how we ended up calling animal control and then sitting in the bathtub together at midnight eating cereal because the apartment felt haunted by wings. He said, "I wish I'd known you then," and I felt the floor tilt. I asked for the check. Outside, he leaned in. I stepped back quickly, heart banging. "Oh," he said, mortified, hands up, retreating. "Sorry. Too fast. I just..." He gestured at the night air as if it might provide the right words. I told him it was fine, hugged him in a way that made sure our faces didn't touch, and called a rideshare so my lie could take me home. I told Chelsea everything the next day. How he spilled water like a rom-com extra, how he brought grocery store tulips, how he tried to kiss me. She gasped and covered her mouth and then texted our other friend Kim under the table, and suddenly I was the star of a small, mean theater. The problem with performing is that you need an audience. The problem with audiences is they want a second act. Daniel brought me breakfast on Monday. Everyone saw. A little bag with the bakery logo, a coffee with my name, my real name, not Amber, on it. He left it on my desk with a note that said, "You make Mondays good," and a smiley face with too many eyelashes. Chelsea waggled her eyebrows at me. Someone wolf whistled. It would have been the easiest thing in the world to say, "Hey, I'm flattered, but no more gifts," and watch the theater close. Instead, I texted him a picture of the bag and wrote, "You're sweet." He wrote back, "So are you," and I didn't answer because I had gotten my response and didn't care to give him his. He started sending good morning texts. They weren't creepy. They were earnest and steady. "Hope you slept well, good luck on the client call, you've got this." I liked reading them on the bus, in that soft hour before real decisions begin, and then I liked deleting them before I got home because that felt like I was maintaining a boundary. He asked me out again. I said yes again. Not because I wanted to see him. Because Chelsea asked, in the elevator, round 2, and I didn't want to be boring. If you're keeping score, and I was, nothing explicitly physical happened. He brushed my hand while passing me a menu. I didn't pull away fast enough to count as a refusal. I told myself I wasn't cheating because Ethan could read my text threads and not find a confession. I omitted the fact that he couldn't read the versions of me that were writing them. Daniel fell. He fell hard the way some men do when they finally get to feed their crush. He started calling me babe in private. The first time he did, I said, "We're not there," and he turned the color of a boiled shrimp and apologized and then slipped back into it 2 days later as if the word had been living under his tongue waiting for its chance again. He told me about his father leaving when he was a kid. He told me how quiet his apartment was at night. He told me that when I laughed, he felt like he could be good. These are not things you say to women who are married. These are not things you accept from men you do not want. I accepted them. I made them into entertainment. I walked back to my desk and told Chelsea, "He said I'm good for him," and we rolled our eyes together until the room blurred. Ethan came to pick me up one Friday, a small kindness after a week of subway breakdowns and heat advisories. He was early. He leaned against the hood of our car with a book tucked into his back pocket like he might pull it out in case I took too long. I walked toward him, already softening, and Daniel saw. He was carrying a box of new mice for IT. The literal kind, not the animal. And he stopped in the middle of the hallway and watched me cross the lobby, watched Ethan's face change when he saw me, watched me put my hand on my husband's chest and let him kiss my forehead. I know this because later Daniel told me he had watched it like a man watches a window into a party he wasn't invited to. I didn't see him. I was busy being the version of myself I liked best. Wife, chosen, wanted by the right person. Monday morning he asked, during the quiet moment before everyone else arrives, "Are you married?" He asked it like it might kill him to hear the answer. I told myself that my answer could be anything and it would hurt him because the hurt was already waiting. I said, too breezily, "Yes. You knew that." He blinked. I didn't. Daniel. I laughed a little, a terrible sound. It's not like I hide it. I have a ring. He looked at my hands like he was seeing them for the first time, which made my stomach drop. You never said husband. You said partner. You said we about your apartment. I thought. He didn't finish the sentence because the world of maybe she's separating collapsed while he spoke. Look, I said, because nothing kind can follow that word, we've just been hanging out. Hanging out, he repeated, and the hurt sharpened into something I didn't recognize on his face. Friendly, I said. I never promised anything. He swallowed. You said yes. It is possible to be technically true and morally grotesque in the same breath. I said yes to dinner. He rubbed his jaw with the heel of his hand and nodded, once, the way people do when they have decided to step into a cold ocean. Okay, he said. Okay. He walked back to his desk. I sat at mine and pretended to work while my chest buzzed like a beehive. The office is a small country. News travels by rumor first, then by Slack, then by meeting invites that include the phrase touch base. By lunch, 2 people had asked me if I was okay. By 2, Chelsea had gone quiet in the chat, which was its own kind of siren. At 3, HR pinged me, "Hi Amber. Could you pop by?" with a smiley face that meant no. When I arrived, the HR manager, Kendra, gestured to a chair and used my name too much. Thanks for coming in, Amber. How are you today, Amber? We just want to check in, Amber. She printed screenshots. My words, cut out and stacked like a ransom note. You're sweet, maybe someday LOL, you make Mondays good, too. A photo of flowers on my desk. A reservation confirmation forwarded to my email with heartsuit typed in the subject line by Daniel because romance looks silly in the harsh light of Outlook. A Slack where Chelsea wrote, "Tell us everything later," and I replied with 3 champagne emojis. Kendra tapped the papers into a neat stack and said, "We take potential harassment very seriously." I didn't harass him, I said. My voice sounded far away and bright, like a recorded message. We're coworkers. He asked me out, I said yes. You are married, Kendra said. Not a question. And he reports indirectly to your manager on projects where you have sign-off. The words indirect and sign-off rearranged how my brain was allowed to think about what I'd done. Power can be sneaky. I'd courted it from Daniel without acknowledging it, and now it stood behind me, shadowy and ugly, while HR used words like inappropriate and perception and dignity at work. They didn't fire me. They moved me. Different pod, different floor, a corrective action plan that read like a scolding written by a very polite computer. Maintain clear professional boundaries. Limit non-work personal communication with colleagues. Mandatory respectful workplace training. I nodded at all of it like I had been caught cheating on a test and needed to accept my detention graciously. Kendra asked if I felt safe. I said yes, because I wasn't in danger. I had just placed someone else in it without ever touching him. I told Ethan that night because the alternative was him hearing it from someone else. He was unloading the dishwasher, fitting the bowls on their little shelf the way he always does. Bigger bowls at the back like he is arranging a tiny amphitheater for leftovers. I need to tell you something, I said. His hand stilled, then he kept placing bowls, which is worse than sudden moves. I told him I'd said yes to a coworker for dinner. I didn't give him Chelsea or HR or the exact words I used in my messages because I didn't want to drop the whole weight on his foot at once. He asked the question I deserved, why? I tried honesty. Because it made me feel wanted, I said. He nodded, which is not the same as agreeing. He said, am I not that, and I said, you are, and we both knew the sentence was true and also not the point. He leaned on the counter, looked at the fridge where our magnets told the story of our last 3 trips, and said, did you kiss him? I said no, which was true. The shape of his shoulders didn't change. Do you want to? He asked, which made my stomach flip in a way that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with fear of who I had become. No, I said again. It sounded small. He didn't shout. He didn't tell me I had to quit. He said, I can't stop you from taking your ring off when you go to work, and then, after a long pause, but I don't know how to be married to someone who wants to. He packed a bag that night. Socks. T-shirts. The charger he always forgets. He moved like he was doing a simple task carefully. I followed him from room to room saying every useless word people say when the sentence they should have lived by is late to class. It was nothing, I said. It was a joke. He zipped the bag. That's worse, he said softly, eyes finally on mine. I can compete with a man. I can't compete with your entertainment. He went to his brother's. He texted later, I'll be back tomorrow for a few more things. He didn't send a heart. He didn't send a period either. The message ended like a plank you could choose to walk if you had balance. I didn't. Daniel filed a formal complaint the next day. Kendra called me back in. He feels misled, she said. He feels the department culture contributed. The words culture and contributed were clever, in that they told me the company would put a bandage on the place my bad choice had cut them and asked me to sign that I agreed it was properly applied. I wanted to be angry at Daniel for telling HR, like outrage would turn the mirror around. Instead, I thought about how I had used his feelings like a whiteboard for my jokes. People used my wedding for their photos, that is not the same thing. Nothing I could aim at him would feel like justice. It would only feel like me trying to be the main character again. Chelsea sent a Slack, he went nuclear, and I stared at the words and saw how much I had loved being the sort of person women whispered about in the break room. I wrote, he told the truth, and then deleted it and sent nothing. She stopped swinging by my desk on the new floor. She wasn't cruel. She just didn't want to sit under the same weather system anymore. Ethan came by the apartment while I was at work and took his running shoes, his favorite mug, the sweatshirt he sleeps in when he's sick. He left his house key on the little dish that holds our chiropractor punch card and 2 paper clips. He left a note. 8 lines, printed carefully like the letters he leaves for his students when he's out sick and doesn't want the sub to have to guess. The first line said, I love you. The second said, I don't like who you are with me right now. The third said, I won't be a joke in my own marriage. The fourth offered couples counseling options with bullet points. The fifth and sixth dealt with rent and utilities. The seventh said, I'll pick up the plants on Sunday, they were my idea and you never liked them. The eighth said, please don't respond to this right away. I didn't. For 2 days I walked through our place like a museum of daily life, touching things as if to learn what they were for. The bed was too big. The couch was too symmetrical. The butter dish on the counter looked accusatory in its little ceramic certainty. I went to work and kept my head down and did my job in a new seat where no one knew me well enough to flirt. Daniel avoided my eyes in the kitchen and I avoided his, which felt like penance but was probably just shame. When Ethan finally agreed to see me, it was in a therapist's office on the 2nd floor of a beige building that looks like it was designed by a person who thinks feelings should be quiet. He sat on the far cushion of the couch and I sat on mine and we answered questions like what do you hope to get out of this and what hurts. He said, I want to be chosen without needing to perform for it. I said, I thought I was allowed to be wanted, and the therapist said, gently, you are. You are not allowed to turn people into mirrors. I cried the embarrassing kind of tears that leave salt on your lips. Ethan handed me the box of tissues without looking at me like I was a wounded thing he could fix. He has always refused to use my worst moments to rehearse his heroics. That is its own kind of integrity. It hurts like a bruise when you bump into it. We tried. For 8 weeks, we tried. We had an agreement about texting Daniel only through group threads for work and forwarding anything personal to HR. We had a schedule for dinners together that included a no-phones rule because we are not children but sometimes need rules like we are. We had sex twice and both times I felt like someone had replaced my body with a replica that didn't know how to relax. I told him and he said, okay, and we lay there holding hands like people on a small boat waiting for the fog to lift. It didn't. He moved back to his brother's after week 9. We didn't announce a separation because we are not celebrities. We just stopped being someone's plural at dinner parties. Daniel transferred to another department, then another company. I got promoted a year later because promotions happen to people who do good work even if those people have also done bad things in other rooms. I didn't go to the holiday party that year. Chelsea did. She sent me a photo of the ugly sweater contest and wrote, miss you, and I wrote back, me too, the way people do when they mean I miss being the person I was before I mistook attention for oxygen. Sometimes people ask me if I regret saying yes. It's not the right question. Saying yes to dinner didn't end my marriage. Treating a person like a prop did. Laughing about him to make other people laugh about me did. leaving my ring out of my sentences so I could see if he would add it himself did. The thing I regret most is that I lied by omission to the one person who trusts me to make him the first place I bring my humiliations. I could have walked into our kitchen on that first day and said, a coworker asked me out and I liked the feeling more than I should have. It would have been an ugly conversation. It would have been the right one. Ethan is good. He is the kind of man who leaves a wedding early because the bride's drunken uncle made a crude joke about the caterer and he doesn't want his presence to be interpreted as consent. He is the kind of man who buys marigolds because he read they help with mosquitoes and then apologizes to the bees when he pulls them out at the end of the season. He is the kind of man who never raised his voice at me, not even when I deserved it most. He won because he walked away with those qualities intact. He didn't scorch the earth to prove a point. He didn't humiliate me to even the score. He stepped out of a life where he had become a punchline and left me to hear the echo of my own jokes. When people tell me I'm brave for saying all this out loud, I want to shake them. This isn't brave. Brave would have been treating Daniel like a human being in the first place. Brave would have been telling Ethan the truth before it set me on fire. What I am doing now is carrying buckets to a house I helped burn. The good news is that ordinary work still puts out flames. You apologize and then you keep apologizing with your choices. You delete the thread you read for flattery when you're bored and you text your husband a picture of the crossword you saved for him. Or you don't, if he's no longer your husband, and you sit with the absence like a person sits with an empty chair and you don't decorate it with excuses. If I could go back to the break room where Chelsea dared me, I'd tell her I'm tired, not bored, and that the kind of tired that makes you play games with people's hearts is the kind you fix with rest and honesty, not fireworks. I'd tell her no, not because I'm noble, but because the version of me who says yes for a laugh hates herself in the morning. I'd take the extra coffee Daniel offers and say thank you and then put it on the communal counter with a note that says free because kindness can be redirected. I'd go home to Ethan and tell him I needed him to look at me like I was new, and then I'd let him tell me what he needed from me to feel chosen. Maybe we'd still be married now, still leaving the last 3 crossword clues for each other like we're building a tiny bridge no one else has to see to trust. I said yes to the wrong question. The only yes that matters comes after you ask yourself, do I want to be the kind of person who turns other people into games? I am trying to make that answer a permanent no. I am trying to be someone Ethan would recognize even if he never chooses me again.